All right, let's talk about something that hits all of us right in the wallet, the price of gas. It goes up, it goes down. It feels completely random, right? But what if it's not? What if there's a hidden story, a pattern, buried in the data? Well, today, we're going to put on our detective hats and crack this case wide open.
I mean, you've probably asked yourself this 100 times while filling up your tank. One week things seem okay, and the next, bam, the price is through the roof. It feels like a total guessing game, but is it really just chaos?
You know, a team of researchers in Sri Lanka were wondering the exact same thing. They had a hunch that if they dug deep into their country's oil industry data, they'd find something interesting. And boy, did they. They uncovered a shocking pattern that connects the gas pump directly to the ballot box.
Now, to solve a mystery this big, the researchers couldn't just look at one thing. They had to become what I like to call data detectives. And that meant building a case, piece, by pulling clues from all sorts of different places.
So where did they get their evidence? Well, they got the raw sales numbers from company computer systems. You can think of that as the forensic data. Then for context, they looked at parliament websites. That's kind of like interviewing witnesses. And finally, they pulled the big picture economic numbers from central bank reports. That's the background check. You got to have it all to see the full picture.
And believe me, this was no walk in the park. They were dealing with some classic big data headaches. First, the sheer volume of information was just massive, tons and tons of daily transactions. Then there's the variety. Some data was in neat reports, other bits were scraped from messy websites. And finally, the velocity. Prices change so fast, it's like trying to hit a moving target.
So they followed a classic three-step detective method. First, they gathered all the clues, pulling that raw data from every source they could find. Second, they had to clean up the evidence, getting rid of errors, making sure it all fits together. And finally, they built their case, loading everything into one central place where they could really start connecting the dots.
Okay, so with all the evidence neatly organized, it was time to follow the trail. The hunt was on. Our detectives started sifting through the data, looking for anything strange, anything that just didn't add up.
Their search covered a whopping 25-year period, from 1990 all the way to 2015. That's a quarter century of data, which is perfect because it gives you a really long-term view to spot any funny business.
And at first, everything looked, well, totally normal. From 1990 to 2008, the price of petrol in Sri Lanka did exactly what you'd expect. It just climbed up and up, pretty steadily. A few dips here and there, sure, but the trend was clear. Nothing to see here, or so it seemed.
But then they found it, the smoking gun. Just look at what happens in 2009 and 2010. After almost 20 years of steady climbing, the price suddenly takes a nosedive. This wasn't just a little dip. This was a massive break in the pattern. This was the one loose thread the detectives knew they had to pull.
And this is where the story gets really, really interesting. Turns out that sudden price drop had nothing to do with global oil markets or some new economic policy. No, the reason was something else entirely.
So the big question was, what was so special about those 2 years? What could possibly cause a 20-year trend to just shatter like that? The answer wasn't in the economic data. It was hiding in plain sight, right there on the Parliament website.
The answer was elections. The data showed a crystal clear pattern. Right before major elections, gas prices often got a little friendlier. That sudden price drop in 2009 and 2010, it lined up perfectly with a key election period in Sri Lanka. Just like that, the mystery was solved.
And you can see the huge impact this had. Let's look at another election period. The price of petrol fell from 165 rupees in 2014 down to 128 in 2015. And what happened? Well, people went out and bought gas. Sales didn't just go up, they exploded, from 5.5 million liters to over 16 million liters.
Let's just put a single number on that, okay? A 293% increase in sales. That's not a nudge. A politically timed price drop didn't just influence people, it caused a stampede to the pump. It just goes to show you how powerfully these hidden forces can shape our wallets and our choices.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. The researchers themselves said their detective work paid off. This method of theirs, it's called a data warehouse, isn't just a cool science project. As they put it, using it for predictions is feasible and efficient. You just can't argue with the data. So, what's the big lesson here? What's the takeaway from all this? Because this story is about so much more than gas prices in Sri Lanka. It's about how data can pull back the curtain
and show us how the world really works. So let's break it down. First, we learned that oil prices aren't just about what's happening on the global market. Local politics can hit you directly in the wallet. We also saw just how dramatically our own behavior changes with prices. But the biggest takeaway is that with the right tools, we can actually uncover these hidden connections.
And that technique they used, data warehousing, it's really just a fancy term for what our detectives did. You collect all this messy data from a bunch of different places, clean it all up, and put it in one spot so you can finally find those hidden patterns and make way smarter decisions.
And that kind of leaves us with one last big question. If a deep dive into data can show us a hidden link between an election and the price of gas, what other invisible forces are out there, quietly shaping our world and our lives every single day? What other mysteries are just sitting there in the data, waiting for a detective to come along and solve them?